Welcome back. The Defense Department's summer calendar includes several big deadlines. The Office of the Secretary of Defense owed the White House a major defense acquisition program review last Tuesday. An acquisition workforce reform plan is due August 7th. David Norquist is president and CEO of the National Defense Industrial Association. He's former Undersecretary of Defense Comptroller. David, welcome. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you for having me, Francis.
Those two pieces that I referenced are out of an EO. There are other EOs. There's new legislation now that Congress has just passed. A lot going on that impacts the department. What are the biggest things that you think impact DoD and the defense industrial base right now?
So I think what you're seeing is two sets. One is the recent reconciliation legislation that passed, and the other is the series of reforms, both coming from the House Armed Services Committee and the Senate Armed Services Committee, as well as in the executive branch through these executive orders, all focused around the recognition that we have exited the post-Cold War era and we are back in a time of great power competition, and we don't have a defense industrial base designed for that.
Is it your sense that the EOs that are coming from the White House and the policy that the Armed Services Committees are making on the Hill sync with each other, or are they at odds with each other sometimes that could cause consternation inside the building?
So they're pursuing very similar ends. There are certain authorities that only Congress can have, certain ones that really are best handled inside the executive branch. And so there'll be certain places where the legislation bumps up against each other. They'll need to make sure they reconcile. But at the core, what each of them is aiming at is first speed. In the post-Cold War era, when there was the drawdown after the Soviet Union, speed was the thing you traded. You wanted exquisite systems, small quantities. But with China as a pacing challenge, speed now becomes one of the most important. There's a lot of new technologies entering, and there's a real push to do more through commercial processes, less of the bureaucratic red tape, and there are various reforms designed to speed that process up.
The term that you used, exquisite systems, I think is a very good one, because the department, even personnel, uniformed personnel especially inside the department, say we need to get out of the habit of asking for everything to be that fancy, that exquisite. And I wonder what that actually looks like from a requirements perspective now, whether your members are seeing the department putting its money and its requirements where its mouth is.
So what you're seeing first is, for the first time, a push on revising the requirements process. So 3 circles inside DoD: the budget process most people are familiar with, the acquisition that gets all the discussion. But the requirements process launches both of those, and for the first time you've seen, both on the Hill and the department, a real desire to completely overhaul how they do requirements. Part of that is when you take 10 to 15 years to field a plane, you put requirements in for which there is no solution. And the assumption is, well, sometime in the next 5 to 10 years we'll research a solution. If you want to have speed, then you really are looking to have systems fielded that solves today's problems with the technology you have, and that's part of speeding it up, is making sure the requirements are more responsive.
What would you like to see the department do, and what can your members and industry do on their side to drive that outcome so that 2, 3, 5 years from now the system is moving the way that the department would like it to move today?
Right. So there's a couple of things. There's a series of rules that the department has, what type of data they're required to be provided, all of which add time to the process, the requirement process, some of the reporting requirements that slow it down. These are the ones that they're looking at, speeding it up, using a more commercial design. But the second one that's equally as important is the stability of the signal. If you want somebody to build a factory to produce new munitions, but in 2 years you change your mind on the munitions, they have to have recovered the cost of that factory. So they get very reluctant to make these investments if they think the demand signal is going to be very erratic. So I think that stability of saying, we're in it, we're buying it, we will continue to make those investments, that's what drives industry, and that's what brings the capital in for those major investments.
We have less than a minute left. Is that what the sea services have already seen with what's happening with shipbuilding capability writ larger for other types of weapon systems across the department, David?
So you've really seen the effect of the Cold War drawdown in ships and particularly submarines, where we laid off very large numbers of people. We went from building 3 submarines or 2 submarines a year down to every other year. And then you try to ramp back up and you realize there's hundreds of companies that are suppliers that don't exist. And trying to speed that up has been a major source of challenge, and part of what the investments are aimed at in reconciliation.
David, it's great to have you on the program.
Always
Thanks for
good to be
joining
here.
me again. Thanks very much.